Thank you for the warmth of your welcome. And the first thing I want to say is congratulations to all those who've just been acknowledged for the input that they've made and the commitment that they've shown and the recognition that they've won. Congratulations to each and every one of you. I hope you feel energized and inspired by the award that you've just received and by being called forth by Martin and by being a part of the work of Patchwork and knowing that what you've done so far, although enormously rewarding and worthwhile as an end in itself, is also so much more than that. It's not a one-off, it's not just a certificate for a particular input at a given time. It's really to be viewed rather as part of a continuous process from which you can benefit, whereby you become more and more and more adept, skilled, and capable of contributing effectively to British political society. So you can view it as that continuous process, or indeed, depending on your preference for one image or another, you can view what you've achieved so far as a springboard for further success and input long into the future. I think that Patchwork is a magnificent organization. We host all sorts, I host all sorts of events, my friends, here in Speaker's House, typically to mark and celebrate the work of great charitable institutions in the local context, of national application, and in some cases, institutions that are working internationally or indeed globally to try to promote fairness, equality, an end to suffering, an increase in opportunity, and a miscellany of good causes broadly around that theme. There is none better than the Patchwork Foundation, and very specifically, although doubtless there are others, I always feel that you have established yourselves as an organization, that Patchwork has established itself as occupying a niche position, as now amongst politicians at the very least, and probably amongst senior people in the civil service and in a number of the professions, the premier organization dedicated to enhancing opportunity for people from disadvantaged, deprived, and minority communities, giving those people a chance to integrate into mainstream British political society and offering them a chance to climb the ladder, a chance that otherwise they might not get. And a chance to climb the ladder not purely for the purposes of career advancement and satisfaction, though that in itself is a perfectly legitimate thing and not to be sniffed at, something Martin will have done in his career and I've tried to do in mine. Nothing to be ashamed of in wanting to fulfill your potential, but you also want to fulfill your potential with a public purpose, in the spirit of leaving things better. And when I was talking to another organization earlier, actually young students at a school engaged in a Lego building program, which was an example of work that they could do to develop their practical skills and potentially to be, as was described, builders of the future. But it was really almost allegorical, if you like. It was a concept of building for the future much more widely than building out of pieces of Lego, building a better future. And in talking to them, I was moved to recall what one of our political leaders, Ed Miliband, had often recalled from conversations with his father when he and his brother David were growing up. And he said that his father, Ralph, and his mother, Marion, had always sought to impress upon both of them as brothers that it was their responsibility to try to leave the world a better place than they found it. Now, that was the way it was articulated to Ed when he was a kid growing up, and I dare say that David Cameron would be able to tell you what was said to him by his parents about the spirit of public service and trying to make the country better than it otherwise would be. So it's a principle that applies across the piece. You are motivated to try to upskill yourselves for your benefit, but also for the country's benefit. And I think it is fantastic that Patchwork can now celebrate its 6th year of commitment and success, with all sorts of opportunities for people to benefit. And in particular, over the last 12 months, I think there have been some notable achievements. There are people who have gone through courses with the Patchwork Foundation, who are working as political advisors, who've managed to get serious and worthwhile and potential filled jobs in key government departments. And of course, you're forging links with the private sector as well. So it isn't just a good idea or warm words. Patchwork is recognized and respected. And that, my friends, if I may say so, you award-winning participants, is testified to also by the guest list tonight, because I looked at the guest list and I see not only representatives of sponsors, but I see people listed who work in number 10, who work in the political parties, who work in the commercial sector, who work in senior positions in the civil service. So you are really getting a terrific opportunity to prove yourselves and to benefit. Now, I've already mentioned Martin. I'm going to do something that will probably be supremely unpopular with the person to whom I'm about to refer, but I think it is necessary. And sometimes a certain amount, you will understand, of personal embarrassment has to be endured by the person on the receiving end of appropriate tribute. And that person tonight is Harris, because Harris is one of life's great doers. He's a great facilitator. He's a real one for, and I've come across this a lot in my time as speaker, mixing with community organizations and great causes, he's a real one for spending far more time thinking about and planning for and trying to get the best out of other people than he spends thinking or talking about himself. But Harris is, I think, a bit of a hero within the Patchwork Foundation, and I think that that is widely recognized. Now, he can be notably shy, perhaps not timid, but shy, and certainly self-effacing, but the truth has to come out. And in the last few days, this great man has celebrated, even though he tried hopelessly unconvincingly to persuade me that he was 24, he has celebrated his 40th birthday. And I think we should all say, congratulations to Harris. You are now at most a third of the way through your life. We expect you to carry on for at least another 80 years, whether you like it or not, for the benefit of Patchwork and the people who've benefited from Patchwork and from your leadership and your inspiration and your example. And the other thing I just wanted to say, my friends, is this, just in case I'm accused of failing to declare an interest. Not only do I admire the work that Patchwork does, and I take great pride and pleasure in welcoming you here for these awards, I am myself the beneficiary of Patchwork's help, because in each of the last two general elections, not really as a result of any pressure or clamour from me, but because of the goodwill of Patchwork spontaneously, a whole team of patchworkers has come to the Buckingham constituency, which I represent, to help me in the election campaign. Now, of course, you take absolute pride in being non-partisan. You are not identified with or affiliated to, still less affiliated to, any particular political party. But Patchwork likes to get experience for its participants on the ground, in election campaigns, knocking on doors, meeting people, talking to people, hearing from people, and you tend to go around the country to all sorts of different constituencies. So you might have helped Sajid Javid in Bromsgrove, and you would have helped, I think, Dr. Rosanna Allen Khan in Tooting, and you helped me in Buckingham. Now, this happened in 2015, and it was absolutely invaluable. I do not wish to make any ageist remark, but it is not unknown that in British politics, most of the parties and most candidates have a disproportionate bias in the people who come out and campaign for them, particularly during the week, but even sometimes at weekends. Put simply, it tends to be quite a lot of experience, but older people. And they work for you, and you say thank you, and you really appreciate it. But they're often quite small in number and fantastically spirited and invaluable, but not necessarily able to move at a huge pace. And I don't say that in a pejorative or dismissive spirit, but they work at their own pace, and you say, if you're sensible as a candidate, thank you. Thank you for helping me. Thank you for sparing the time. And you never take it for granted. If they come out once for half an hour, you say thank you. If they come out twice, brilliant. Anything beyond that, it's a bonus. You don't have a right to people coming out to help you. They're volunteers. Patchwork came out for me in 2015 and took everybody aback by the intensity of their activity. This time round, in the June election, I must have had, on a Saturday afternoon, at least 15, if not 20 people from Patchwork, and we went round an estate called Buckingham Park, which is actually very much in the south of my constituency. It's nearer to Aylesbury than it is to Buckingham. Martin, I think you'll understand when I say that the good people of the Buckingham Park estate frankly didn't know what had hit them. They were minding their own business. They were in their own homes. They were enjoying family activity. They were watching sport. They were playing board games. They were reading books, or whatever it may be. Rat-a-tat-tat on the door. And some patchworker would appear, whom they'd never previously encountered, and they all had one thing in common, of which I hugely approved, all of these patchworkers. Good afternoon. I'm campaigning on behalf of John Bercow. Do you think he will be able to rely upon your vote? And they all said it with great enthusiasm. Now, I can't prove, my friends, that there is a causal link, but I simply want to observe to you intelligent folk, and you will draw your own conclusions, that in 2010, I had a majority of 12,529. When Patchwork came back 5 years later, came for the first time 5 years later, my majority went up from 12,529 to 22,942. And in June this year, my majority went up from 22,942 to 25,725. Now, I'm inclined to say I'm happy to claim credit for the 725 if Patchwork is prepared to accept credit for the 25,000. I was hugely appreciative, so thank you for helping me. Thank you for helping other colleagues in a public-spirited way, and I just want to wish you all the best for the years ahead. Soon, I hope, my parliamentary colleagues will troop back into Speaker's House from the various votes in which they're engaged, and there will be all sorts of other awards to present. And I, in my normal way, will follow the instructions given by Harris Bakari, OBE, brackets, 40, close brackets, and the great Sir Martin Lewis. Now, I know that this may seem very banal and unoriginal, but in tribute to you, and I want everybody lustily to take part, I invite you to give 3 cheers for the Patchwork Foundation as a facilitator of inclusion and social mobility. 3 cheers for the Patchwork Foundation. Hip, hip, hooray! I can't hear you. Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Thank you.